in any event, we've been learning this Gemara about drinking olive oil. That was the main topic yesterday. Drinking olive oil. What is the blessing on olive oil? So the first thing we mentioned was that we had quoted a statement a while back that the law, the blessing for olive oil is Beirei Pri Ha'etz. And we discussed this when we were talking about wine, which you would think would be the also blessing Beirei Pri Ha'etz. And the Gemara said, no, wine gets a special blessing. And the Gemara asked, what about olive oil? Olive oil doesn't get a special blessing because we have a statement from some rabbis that olive oil, you would recite the Beirei Pri Ha'etz, and you don't do a special blessing. And why is wine different? So this was quoted earlier. Now the Gemara says, let's talk about this quotation. And so the Gemara delves into it. So we have a statement from rabbis that on olive oil, one recites the blessing, Beirei Pri Ha'etz. And the Gemara asks, how could this be that you recite a blessing? If you drink a cup of olive oil, you're going to recite a blessing who creates the fruit from the tree. You're going to recite a blessing on it. This is a Izuki Mazikle. It damages a person. And there are different commentaries how to translate this. To what extent does it damage a person? Does a person also get some benefit from it, or is there zero benefit from it? But because it damages a person, it's unhealthy. It'll cause them a stomach ache because it's dangerous for a person. Does that mean we don't care if there's a little benefit, but that like ruins it? Or does it mean fully that there's zero benefit, only damage? So these are different commentaries, different opinions in the commentaries, how to translate it. Rashi seems the most common commentary. Rashi on the side of the Gemara here, he says that he doesn't really exclude the possibility that you're going to get some type of a nourishment from it. He doesn't talk about that. He just says it's not an eating that would require a blessing, because by a blessing it says you should eat, and this is not the type. You wouldn't call this regular eating. So from Rashi, it does seem like he's not excluding the fact you might be getting some type of benefit, but the fact is that it's Uzuki Mazik, and the understanding is in Rashi, this is not an eating that requires a blessing. So what Rashi is saying, the Gemara said that on olive oil, a person recites a blessing, Beirei Pri Ha'etz, who creates the fruit from the tree. And Rashi says this is not an eating that would require a blessing. And that means that you don't make any blessing at all, zero blessing. I did mention that there is opinion of the Rambam. And the Rambam says it doesn't deserve the blessing of being fruit from a tree, olive oil, but it does deserve some blessing in some form, which is the blessing shahakol niyabvare. So I mentioned that there is that opinion, that side view, and the commentaries try to figure out what is the source of the Rambam. The Gemara seems to imply that it's damaging. So why would you recite a bracha on something that is not beneficial, or it's painful to you, and it's causing it's dangerous? Why would you be reciting a blessing on it, or what is the source for it? So the answer, the Rambam, we do need to wait for the next Gemara. We're gonna put that on hold to explain a little of the Rambam and then compare the two Gemaras. We are going to find that you have to compare things in this chapter a lot, because we're dealing with blessings, and we're going to say, well, in this scenario, the blessing is this. But the question is, well, why is that different than the other case? So we're going to be comparing a lot of cases during this chapter. So one of the things, in order to understand this Rambam, is we're going to have to talk about eating raw or eating flour from barley. And when we talk about flour from barley, we're going to be able to come back to the Rambam and try to figure out how the Rambam is understanding it and comparing these two cases, eating olive oil and eating barley flour. Yes, Susan.
Okay, before you go leave the oil, there's a difference between oil that is kosher and oil that is not kosher. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the oil primarily that we're talking about is oil being used in cooking as an additive, not drink. The fact we don't drink olive oil, we use it in cooking. However, to anoint somebody, that's a very serious gesture, is it not?
Anointing someone? Are you
Correct.
thinking of anointing someone?
No, I'm not now. I'm just.
I don't know what you mean.
I'm saying that's what they used to anoint somebody a king during this period of time with olive oil.
Okay, so but we're not dealing with anointing.
We're not talking about that at all. We're only talking about oil being
drinking.
olive oil using as a food.
Yeah, not car, not transmission oil, olive oil that's eaten, right?
Okay.
And we're dealing with someone drank it, and we was going to try to figure out. Now, I do want to mention, you talked about kosher olive oil. Virgin olive oil, 100% pure, cold pressed olive oil does not require kosher supervision. But extra light olive oil is olive oil that has been processed by heat and refined. That would require kosher supervision. Pure olive oil is a combination of virgin olive oil and refined olive oil, and therefore would require supervision, at least from my understanding. Again, the laws of kosher supervision do change with the changing of the methods that are used to create things. So it's just important to know. Now, most people I know are not going to buy olive oil without a kosher supervision on it. Most olive oils have a kosher supervision. I'm just mentioning that you're talking about kosher olive oil. So
Yes.
so I'm just mentioning that there is if an olive oil is just pressed cold, theoretically it should be fine. But we don't like to rely on things like that anyway. And also when it says pure, that for sure needs a supervision. And if it says extra light or light olive oil, it for sure would need a supervision. So in any event,
One more,
Rabbi,
yes.
One more question. Okay, you were saying yesterday that blackberry wine is the worst. So what type of wine should be used?
Well, blackberry wine is not kosher, is not able to be used for kiddush.
But it says on the Manischewitz, it has the emblem.
What emblem
I have to
are
go.
you referring to? It's kosher, but it's not good for kiddush. It's kosher. You're allowed to drink it. Drink it during the week. Don't drink it for Shabbos. Don't drink it to make kiddush. You can drink it on Shabbos, but don't make the.
That's what I'm asking. What wine?
Don't make the kiddush on
Shabbos?
Yeah, but they're not. Manischewitz is not going to tell you if you can use it for kiddush. They'll tell you if it's the label tells you if it's kosher, but most labels are not going to tell you if it's kosher for kiddush. That's not a common. It's not commonly done.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So they're not telling you to use it for kiddush. But blackberry wine, it's also like the same thing applies to passion fruit wine and to they make pomegranate wine. There's also pineapple wine. You can get all different types.
Between when something is kosher and when you can use it for saying
kiddush. Of course, totally different things. Yeah, you're allowed to drink it, but you don't make kiddush during the week. You could drink it.
But on Friday nights, I'm talking about Friday nights.
Friday night, do not make kiddush on blackberry wine.
Okay. Thank you.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a question regarding, you were talking about the blessing on olive oil.
Yeah.
So if you're having, let's say, vegetable soup, you say a blessing, Borei Pri Hadama. However, if the vegetable soup is totally pureed and you don't see any pieces of vegetable, it's just like a liquid soup, like liquid. Then you would say a shakol because you don't identify the pieces of the food there. It's like potato chips and Pringles. Pringles is made from 100% dehydrated potato granules, and we make a shakol on Pringles, whereas on potato chips, it's identified that it's a piece of a potato. So my question is, according to the view that you make a blessing on the oil, there's no remnants of the olive that can identify it as what it is, other than a liquid. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the question is, you're trying to explain the difference, and you're right. There is a difference. Like, for example, kugel. There's two types of potato kugels. One is totally ground up that you can't see any. It's like potato powder made from potato powder. That would be the hakel, or like a potato kugel that's shredded. So if it's shredded, that would be more like a you would say hadama, or your example, or right. So the point is that if there's pieces, but you're giving an explanation of why is that. So you want to say that the reason is because you can't see it, but it could be that the difference is not if you could tell, but has it been changed completely from its purpose? So if you look at it that way, the change of olive oil is not changed at all from its purpose. It actually is olive oil, and that's what it was meant to be. So it looks like olive oil, it is olive oil. But the change that happens to potatoes is a change from what it's meant to be. That is considered a change. So if you look at it a little differently, you can understand why wine would be very pre ha'etz officially without the change that the rabbis made. The original bracha would have been very pre ha'etz on wine, and the original bracha on olive oil, if not for the fact that it's dangerous, the bracha on olive oil would be ha'etz, because that would be the goal, that would be the purpose of the olives and of the grapes.
But for instance, if there's vegetable soup that you make and it has vegetables and you say Borei Pri Hadama, if you just put the vegetable soup back in the blender and left it on high for a couple of minutes, there's no change. It's exactly the same vegetable soup, but it would change the bracha because there's no more identifiable vegetables that are inside the soup anymore. It's just liquid. It's just a thick vegetable liquid. There's no change, but the form has changed. So that would affect the blessing, I would think. The same as Pringles and potato chips.
Yeah. Now, I'm not 100% sure of your example because you would need it to be fully zhuzhed to totally fully ground, fully ground and
liquefied.
But the thing is that soup, I don't know that it always gets that way. You probably, in your vegetable soup, you'll probably have some pieces. But theoretically, let's say you did get it totally that way, it would be a change from what the vegetables were. So it is a change. You know what I mean? You're changing it from what their original purpose is. Their original purpose of vegetables is to eat them, and now you've changed it into something that's not that's different than it was. If there are pieces, then it's still the same. You get what I'm saying? You're changing it from its purpose. Here you're keeping it. This is the goal. This is the purpose of the grapes is wine. So when you change it from wine, that would be an issue. When it is wine, that is what it's supposed to look like.
But the purpose between vegetable soup with vegetables that are identifiable as pieces of vegetable and vegetable soup that's 100% pureed, and there's no change. The change in the purpose all remain exactly the same. The only change is
Well,
whether.
why do you say there's no change? You've changed the carrots from their goal. Their purpose was to eat them as either carrots raw or carrots cooked, and now you've changed it to a puree, total puree with no pieces even. So you have definitely changed it from its original plan.
But you didn't change.
Not just original plan. It's the way it's eaten. What did you say? You didn't change it?
But you didn't. Yeah, you didn't change the actual substance. Whatever nutrients you were hoping to get from carrots doesn't become less or more because you ground them up or you didn't ground them up.
So we're not talking about nutrients. You don't change the nutrients, I guess, from grinding it. I don't know that it changes the amount of sodium or calcium or iron. It doesn't change. That's true. We're not dealing with the nutrients, but you are changing the item.
But
You're
Rabbi,
changing the carrot.
all he's
You know what I'm saying?
have my
You're
hand
looking
up,
at it
Susan.
from its beneficial nutrients. That's not what we're dealing with.
Rabbi, all he's
You've
doing
changed it from
instead of
its
chewing,
original.
he's drinking he's drinking it as opposed to
I've been
chewing
waiting
it.
for a while here to say something, and you just jump right in, Susan.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Ben. Okay, Ben. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say, especially for Susan, that the wine, if it's not made from grapes, you cannot say the blessing of a geffen. That's why you cannot use it when you say blessings. The wine that's made from other fruits, there's a different blessing. So, and as far as the soup, I think there could also be a problem of safek lemarit ayin. If you can't see the pieces, people that will look at it will think, that it's not made from pure vegetables. Depends on what else was in the soup.
I'm not sure if we would consider Marasayan something, but that's an interesting thought. Okay, so in any event, let's go back to what we were dealing with. So we're talking about olive oil, and we mentioned that olive oil is mazik. It damages. It's dangerous, and because of that, at least according to Rashi and many of the commentaries, you would not recite a bracha. So why are these rabbis? We're quoting some rabbis that said the blessing on olive oil is bayrei pri ha'etz. So the Gemara initially wants to say that you didn't drink it, but what did you do? You ate it with bread. So you dip bread in it. But on that, the Gemara says the bread would be the ikar and the olive oil would be the tafel. The ikar means the initial, the main, the main food. What's that? And the olive oil would be secondary. And when it comes to a main food and a secondary food, the main food would be, you would say the bracha on the main food, and the secondary food would be included. And so the Gemara has to come to a final, to a different answer, because then we would not recite a bari pri ha'etz. If you had bread with olive oil, what would the blessing be? Hamaitzi lechem min haaretz. You would recite the blessing on bread. So the Gemara answers that, you know what? We're dealing with a different case. You ate you drank the olive oil, or you drank it through something called anigrain. And yesterday we talked about anigrain. It's some type of a beet soup, and ultimately the situation is that they used to put into this anigrain, they would put olive oil, and here you're going to recite what? So the question is, so what bracha would you recite? So if you put olive oil in anigroin, would you recite the blessing for the anigroin, or would you recite the bracha for the olive oil? Now, anigroin, we said, was this beet juice and beet soup, and we mentioned that there's a question of what the bracha exactly would be if you were to recite a bracha on this beet soup. Would it have been a shahakal or would it have been a ha'adama? But the main thing is it would not be ha'etz, who creates the fruit from the vine, from the tree. And you definitely would not be reciting that bracha because beets do not grow on trees. So you would not be reciting the blessing ha'etz on the anigroin because you added olive oil into the anigroin. So you're not going to recite a bracha on the olive oil. The main thing is the beet soup. You have olive oil is very nice. It gives it a little flavor. It adds, it makes it a little more tasty, but it's not, the main thing is the beet soup. So the Gemara answers that you're right. If you just had a nigroin with some olive oil, that bracha would not be on the olive oil. But here we're dealing with a case that a person has a sore throat. And the way Rashi learns, and we got a little into this yesterday, but I want to go more into it today, and we're going to go through Teves' way of understanding it. The Gemara says here that when a person has a sore throat, and the Gemara in Shabbos tells us, are you allowed to gargle or drink olive oil? So the way Rashi learns it is you're not allowed to gargle olive oil, and on Shabbos. You would not be allowed to gargle it. Why? Because olive oil is considered a medicine. You're gargling something that's not normally eaten. It's medicine. You're gargling it. The rabbis made a decree against having medicine on Shabbos unless it's necessary, either because of danger. And here a person just has a sore throat. It's not considered danger that their whole body is sick. It's not considered life danger. And therefore, the rabbi said, we're afraid you're going to end up grinding your own herbs for medicine. And the rabbi said, no medicine on Shabbos, because the rabbis were afraid a person would forget and start grinding. And even things that weren't so necessary, you would have all these nutritionist people start grinding their, all the types of vitamin C's and vitamin D and vitamin B12 and vitamin this. They would start, who knows what type of saw palmetto and this, all the different stuff that people take, they would start grinding. And it would be quite a many prohibition. You'd be transgressing every time you grind. So therefore, the rabbi said that a person is not allowed to take medicine. So what happens when it comes to a sore throat? So you're not allowed to gargle the oil, but you could put the oil into a nigroin and swallow it. So it's a little confusing here because we're going to see a few different ways of understanding this. The way Rashi learns is that you're not allowed to leave it in your mouth and spit it out, right? You can't leave it in your mouth, gargle it, and spit it out. And either spit it out, one way of learning Rashi. Another way of learning Rashi is you hold it there for some time before swallowing it. And it basically is clear that you're doing this for medicinal purposes. But what are you allowed to do? You're allowed to put it in a nigroin and drink it. Now, would you be allowed to put it in a nigroin and gargle it? Or would you be allowed to drink it if you just drink it without gargling it? So again, it's a little. Let's think about this. The Gemara says you're not allowed to ya'arenu. You're going to translate ya'arenu as gargle. Lo ya'arenu b'shemen tchila b'Shabbos. You can't gargle it. Gargle your mouth, the oil in your mouth on Shabbos. And the thing is, you're not allowed to gargle it on Shabbos. You can't gargle it on Shabbos, but you could put it into a nigroin and swallow it. So that's the wording of the Gemara. So if you learn that you're not allowed to gargle it on Shabbos, why can it not just say, but you are allowed to swallow it? Why does he have to put it in a nigroin and swallow it? Just swallow it. Don't gargle. Just drink your olive oil. Why does it say put it in a nigroin and put it in the anigroin that you're allowed to do? No, you're allowed to, as long as you don't gargle it, you could drink it. As long as you don't gargle it, you could drink it. So Tosfos is bothered with that question, that it says you can't gargle it, but you could put it in a nigroin and drink it. What do you mean? You tell me not to gargle it, fine, but then why can't I just drink it straight? So Tosfos therefore says, you know what? Ya'arenu doesn't mean gargle. Ya'arenu means drink something that's not normally drank. And Tosfos learns that what it's saying is you're not allowed to drink oil on Shabbos, but you're allowed to drink it through putting it in a nigroin. So according to Tosfos, what comes out is that even if you're going to swallow it, you're not allowed to drink it if it looks like medicine. Something that looks like medicine, you're not allowed to drink, even if you're going to swallow it. And therefore, according to Tosfos, forget about gargling. We're not even dealing with gargling. Forget about gargling. You can't gargle. You want to drink it, you can only drink it if it looks like it's food. A nigroin looks like food. You put oil into the nigroin, and now you're going to have the oil having a good effect on your sore throat. That is allowed on Shabbos. Because why is it allowed on Shabbos? Because it looks like food, doesn't look like medicine. But we're not dealing with gargling. The way Rashi learned, you're dealing with gargling. The question on Rashi was, why do you have to put it in a nigroin and drink it? Just drink it straight. Now, Tosfos wants to answer Rashi. He says, you know how you could answer Rashi? You could answer Rashi that you're not allowed to gargle it and just have in mind to gargle it and spit it out. But if you want, you could put it in a nigroin and gargle it and spit it out. So you would be allowed to gargle it. So don't gargle olive oil straight. You could gargle olive oil and spit it out, or you could you could gargle olive oil that's in a nigroin and spit it out, or if you want, you could drink olive oil straight and not gargle it. So the way Tosfos wants to explain Rashi is, why does the Gemara mention a nigroin? It's if you want to gargle. If you want to gargle, you have to do the a nigroin option, because you want to gargle, then at least don't make it look like it's medicine. A nigroin is a food, so you're going to keep it in your mouth and like gargle it, keep it there for a while. So that would be only permitted if it's a nigroin. The other way that it would be permitted is if you drink the olive oil without gargling. So there you're drinking it. It's olive oil. It's drinking. It's not so clear that it's medicine. You know, it makes it more permissible. So that's the way Tosfos wants to learn Rashi. Again, what's bothering Tosfos with Rashi's explanation is that why does the Gemara jump to a nigroin? Let it just say simply, don't gargle, just drink. Why does it jump and say, put it in a nigroin, put it in beet soup? Let it just say, you can't gargle olive oil, drink olive oil. So according to Tosfos' answer, it's saying that you could drink olive oil, don't gargle. But if you want to gargle, put it in a nigroin to gargle. So don't gargle olive oil plain, put it in a nigroin and you can gargle it. A nigrain is the beet soup. You can put it in the beet soup and gargle. So that's the way Teves wants to learn Rashi. And Teves himself learns that you're not allowed to do any. We're not talking about gargling. We're talking about drinking, only drinking, and even drinking. You wouldn't be allowed to drink olive oil plain, but through a nigrain you could drink it, and that would be the way Teves is learning. And what would come out here would be a question: are you allowed to gargle something that on Shabbos that you're doing for medicine, but it looks like food? And according to Rashi, the way Teves learns Rashi, you would be allowed to gargle it as long as it's something like a nigrain that looks like food, and you're doing it for medicine purposes, but it looks like food, so you would be allowed to gargle. According to Teves, it seems like we're not, you're not allowed to gargle and spit it out. He's only dealing with drinking it, and even drinking it, the only way to drink something that's medicine is if it's included in food, and then and it fits in the food, and you drink that food, that would be permissible. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to ask, are you allowed to gargle and then swallow it?
So the problem with gargling was, according to Rashi, you would, of course, you would be allowed to swallow it afterwards, because you could even gargle and spit it out.
Oh, I understand, but generally, is it allowed to gargle and swallow it on Shabbos?
Well, that's the thing. If it's a medicine, if you're doing it for medicine purposes, then it could be a problem, according to Teves. Teves doesn't want to learn about gargling. He's learning straight.
So the gargling indicates medication.
According to Teves, for sure.
Okay.
According to Rashi, you're gargling or you're keeping it in your mouth. That would be okay if it's a food. If it's a food and it just happens to have some olive oil in it. Okay, so that sort of gives us a little understanding here about this olive oil that you're drinking it with this anigra. And that was, the Gemara gave this example, and then it mentioned that not only are you drinking it with anigrain, but it's talking about a person who has a sore throat. And the Gemara says that you see that you could put a lot of olive oil in this anigrain and drink it. And this would be an example of reciting a bracha on olive oil. You would recite a Bayrei Pri Ha'etz, who creates the fruit from the tree, because you're drinking olive oil, and it's not dangerous for you. On the contrary, it's actually a medicine. And so the Gemara says, well, in that case, the Gemara says, then it's pshita, then it's obvious. What are you even telling me this law for? It's obvious that you have to recite a bracha on the olive oil. The whole purpose of the anigrain, that you're drinking this anigrain, is for the olive oil part of it. You're not drinking it for the beet soup. You're drinking it because you want the olive oil. You can't drink straight olive oil. And so therefore, you're drinking it with anigrain. Therefore, the whole purpose is the olive oil. Of course, you recite a bracha on the olive oil. So the Gemara answers, no, I would think that since it's for refuah, since it's for healing, so your purpose of drinking it is not for sustenance, it's not for nourishment. So you're drinking it for refuah, for healing. I would think you don't recite a bracha at all. But it comes and lets us hear that since you're getting benefit from it, it does need a bracha. And we mentioned over here that there's a Teves on the side that says that from here you see, it seems that if a person drinks liquid, that's some type of drink that tastes bad, you don't get pleasure from it, you don't need to recite a bracha. But if you do get pleasure from it, besides for the healing pleasure, besides for the healing benefit, but you're getting pleasure, you're enjoying it, so that would require a bracha, which means that when kids have medicine that tastes good, like a strawberry, if it actually tastes good, then they would recite a bracha on that medicine, which is questionable. I don't know. Sometimes kids can't stand the medicine even after they add the flavor to it. But if they like the medicine, then for sure you would recite a bracha. Yes, Yehuda.
Is there any reason to drink olive oil other than medicinal?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, so I don't understand the discussion then.
Which discussion?
The one that you just had.
So, in other words, what you want to say is olive oil is definitely for medicine purposes,
Well,
and therefore,
if you're drinking it straight,
and therefore you want to say that on Shabbos there's no way you could drink it straight, even to swallow. Even if you swallow it, you wouldn't be allowed to drink it straight. And you want to say that the reason why Rashi maybe, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think maybe this is what you mean, that you want to say maybe the reason why Rashi, the way Rashi learns is you're not allowed to gargle it, but you could put it into a nigroin and drink it. And the reason why Rashi says you can't drink it straight is because it would be dangerous. It would also be a medicine. So you can't gargle it. You also can't drink it straight because it would be a medicine. So that's why the Mishnah doesn't say that, because you also couldn't drink it straight, but you could drink it if you put it in, or you're asking a question on Teves, I guess, because Teves wants to learn Rashi that you would be allowed to drink it straight. So you're asking, how could Teves learn that in Rashi? Maybe that's what you're asking. That right. How could Teves say in Rashi that you could drink it straight? That's the way Teves understands Rashi. How could you drink it straight? Isn't it pretty obvious that it's medicine? I guess Teves would learn that since you're not gargling it, so it's not clearly medicine, because medicine for throat medicine you would gargle it. So since you're not gargling it, you're not clearly doing it for medicine purposes. You might be meshuggah drinking olive oil, but it's not clear that it's for medicine purposes. Maybe that's the answer. That's a thought that comes to my mind. Okay, yes, Ben.
I wanted to say, if I'm right, we are missing the whole point of drinking the oil, because it started out that the oil needs a separate blessing, like wine.
Okay.
Here with the agron, we are already not talking about only oil. It's mixed already. So what's the whole purpose of it? Now we are talking only about medicine, but we missed already the point of giving a separate blessing for the oil.
Mm. So the Gemara ended that discussion a while back about the discussion of why wine has a special blessing and oil doesn't. That the Gemara ended and said that wine is satiating
and sustaining.
Well, first it said sustaining, but then it said olive oil is also sustaining. Then the Gemara said wine is satiating, and so therefore, well, the initial point was that it's soyed and it's satiating. Then the Gemara, so on that, the Gemara was implying and emphasizing that olive oil is not soyed. It doesn't satiate, and that was the end of that discussion. Now we're dealing with simply, does it deserve a bracha by pri ha'etz, who creates the fruit from the tree? Does it deserve that bracha? That's what we're dealing with, because we did bring up such a statement earlier.
I didn't know that we finished it. I thought we were still talking that somebody said that oil deserves a separate blessing, just like wine. And then they said, well, nobody drinks oil. So we said, yeah, they drink oil, but in an egron.
No. So that there was two dots in the Gemara that it like ended that discussion. If you look on the previous page, 6 lines up from the bottom, there's two dots over there that starts with the new Gemara Gufa. And
Okay, so they were done with it. I didn't
that
know
was
they
the
were
end.
done.
Those two dots ended that Gemara.
Okay.
Yes, Susan.
Can you tell me if this sentence is true or false that I'm going to read to you? Since you are benefiting from anything you eat or drink, you must say a blessing.
Is that true? We learned it. It's got to be true.
Okay, so anything that you eat or drink, you have to say a blessing.
Except
So now you want to
things.
know if you eat something that's dangerous, if you would recite a bracha. Now, is that what you're
I'm
asking?
not asking you, I'm just saying to you, anything that I eat or drink, I have to have a blessing.
Well, only if it's meant to be eaten, and if you're doing it for the purpose of eating. So there are some qualifications you would need to make on that statement, but it is a true statement. It would need to be qualified.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So the Gemara's conclusion here was that since you're benefiting from this olive oil, besides for the medicine purposes, you're benefiting. So therefore, you enjoy the eating of it. Therefore, there would be a bracha required, and that bracha is the barei pri ha'etz, the blessing of that you would recite on on this olive oil is like the bracha you would recite on the olive, but who creates the fruit of the tree. The next Gemara we started yesterday, Kimcha dechiti. So Kimcha dechiti, I mentioned to you there's differences of opinion what we're dealing with. Rashi seems to learn here that we're dealing with simple flour of wheat flour. And Teves doesn't want to say that. He says, if so, how could you recite a blessing, the regular blessing, Barei Pri Ha'adama, on wheat flour? It's not normally eaten that way. And he wants to say that we're dealing with a different type of something similar to it, but not exactly that. Either some type of a kemach that he calls ish klatir. Ish klatir. He doesn't really tell us what that is, but it's something that's obviously more chewable. And or he says a flour from oats that you roast in the oven. So somehow these would be more understandable to Teves, that you would recite a bracha on it. I'm guessing that the oats, the flour from oats that you roast, maybe is similar to granola. I don't know. I'm just throwing a thought there, but it's somehow Teves is more comfortable with that. I guess it's more usual to eat. Yes, Ezra.
I think the word is in French is éclater, which means to burst. So it's possible, for example, like if you were to make popcorn. So popcorn is burst,
Right.
whatever.
So puffed wheat. There's a cereal called puffed wheat.
So puffed rice, maybe, or puffed whatever, puffed wheat.
Puffed wheat. Yeah, we're talking about kimcha de chiti. Chiti is wheat. So, so that's interesting that it would mean puffed, because there is a book called Laws of Brachas who does the old French translations, and they want to say that it means it's not ground so much. It still has a taste of wheat, and it's not ground so much, and it still has a taste of wheat. But you're translating ish klatir as puffed from.
Okay, the shin, okay, which would normally be an accent aigu, I think, it's like the word hospital in French. Hôpital is the same as hospital. The S is replaced by an accent over the O to indicate that there used to be a letter there, but it's been replaced. I think the sheen over here would form the same, has the same kind of property as the S in hospital, which has been replaced in modern French. So if you do not include the sheen, the word would be éclater. Éclater, which means to burst.
Okay, interesting. Sounds good to me. So maybe we're dealing with a burst, which would be like puff. The only problem I have, I guess, is the kimcha. How could he translate? Kimcha literally means flour. Could it be flour from maybe that's what it means. Flour that's made from burst wheat, from puffed wheat. Maybe that's how you would translate it then. Let me just think. Let me just see. Kimcha shakirin ish klatir. No, kemach that you call it burst. Maybe what it would mean is it's like burst flour, that it's not ground so much. Maybe that's what it means. That it's more like it's blown up, that it bursts. I wonder if they puff it so much that it could burst into little pieces, but it's not actually ground to be flour, fully flour. It's like it's a coarse flour. Anyway, that somehow Taisa seems to be talking about this flour of chitim, and thank you, Ezra. That's great. I mean, I don't know how we're so blessed to have you here to translate such a word. I mean, I don't know if in yeshivas, I never heard anyone that knew any of these old French Rashi's words. Wow. So
no, I try very hard to try and understand what he says in French, because sometimes if I understand the French, it might help me understand what he's trying to say.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So
amazing.
In the last two words of that particular Tosfot says Shemeyavshin Batanur. It means that they dry it out in the oven.
Right.
So if it goes too far, then it can actually burst.
Right. No, the only thing is, Taisus is saying two explanations. And the second one is a different one than the ashklatir. The first one he calls ashklatir. Then he says, or it's a kemach shaisin from oats that you dry out in the tanur.
Okay, but you're doing so. I mean, can't you?
But still, I think your point is a good point. That maybe what it means is somehow it's broken into pieces, but it didn't. But it's not fully ground. Anyway, that's definitely one of the explanations here. That it's not ground
instead of ground.
Shredded. So it's ground coarsely and not so fine. So in any event, so the Gemara, we're now at the two dots. We're on page 36a, and we are 10 lines from the top of the page. Kimcha dechiti, this kemach, this flour of chitim, of wheat. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer Bari Pri Adama. Rabbi Yehuda says, you recite a bracha, Bari Pri Adama, the regular bracha of wheat, that it created the fruit from the ground. Rav Nachman Amar, and Rav Nachman says, Shahakol Nihiya Bidvaroi. He says, you recite the bracha Shahakol, that everything is created from God's word. Now, I should mention that the bracha Shahakol is very interesting. It's considered a very general bracha. And there are cases where a person doesn't know what bracha to recite. And the Shulchan Aruch tells us that if you don't know what bracha to recite, go to a rabbi and learn the laws of brachas. But if there is an argument about the laws of brachas, in that case, then you can recite the bracha shehakol. And this is an interesting point. And the truth is, we learned the Gemara about this earlier, that it said, my takante, on page 35a, we said, my takante, what should you do to fix this up? And the Gemara said, what do you mean? If you sinned and you didn't recite a bracha, you can't fix it up. The Gemara says, no. What should you do to know what do you do to be able to recite the bracha? So the Gemara answered, you should go to a chacham in the beginning to learn the laws of brachas. That this is an area of halacha, an area of Jewish law, that you're not supposed to just say, well, what I know. And what I don't know, I'll just recite a shahakol. I'll just recite a bracha, a general bracha, and then I'm fine. The Gemara says, no, you have to go and study the laws of brachas. Brachas is an area where everyone is sort of obligated to study. And in fact, in the Shulchan Aruch, it says, all of this applies that you don't know which bracha you can say a shahakol. It applies after you learn the laws. After you learn the laws, and you don't know, in other words, there's an argument of what to do, or in a case where a person said a bracha. So in these cases, you can, you fulfill it by reciting another bracha that you that you were able to fulfill the obligation. But initially, you're not allowed to just say a shahakol. You have to go and recite the bracha that it's necessary for it. And if a person is not knowledgeable, they should go and learn. Yelach etzel chacham, go to a scholar and let him teach you the laws of brachas. So this is important to know, because a lot of people, they think, well, shahakol is an easy bracha you can just get away with, whenever you're not sure. And the thing is, no, you got to at least go through the laws of brachas. Either, the Gemara says, go to a scholar. Nowadays, I guess you have books on brachas, so that should be maybe considered good enough. At least, a person went through the books and, knows where there's arguments and discussions. So then you can recite a shahakol when you're unsure. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I'm going to my Rabbi Smith to ask. We learned, I think, that when you make a vow not to eat, it doesn't include water and salt. Do we say a blessing on water and salt?
Okay, we're going to come to it, actually.
Okay.
Okay, so the bracha that Rab Nachman says to recite is shahakol. It changed. It's not considered a fruit that is made from the ground, because this is not the ultimate purpose that it's meant for. In other words, wheat meant to be made into bread, into cake. Here you're eating the ground wheat. You changed it, and it's and therefore you would recite a shahakol according to Rav Nachman. So I'm going to Rav Nachman. So Rava asked Rav Nachman, Loi sif like alei de Rabbi Yehuda, you should not argue on Rabbi Yehuda, because the Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel kaimi kavosei. Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel, they also hold like him. Damar Rabbi Yehuda or Shmuel, v'chein amar Rabbi Yitzchak amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel. Rabbi Yitzchak said the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Shemen Zayis. 1 second, let me mute it. Shemen Zayis, the olive oil, and this is a Gemara, this is a statement we've discussed already. This is now we're bringing its the full statement. Shemen Zayis, it says mevarchan alav beirei pri ha'etz. You recite on olive oil the blessing beirei pri ha'etz, the blessing of thanking Hashem who created the fruit from the tree on olive oil. So this is that statement that we've mentioned. And Alma, the Gemara says, you see from here, and the Rava is saying, you see from here, Afal Gav de Ishtani, even though something changes, b'milsei koi, it stays with its bracha, and the law of ha'etz would apply to olives, and the same law hachanami avagav de'ishtani, even though something changes, b'milsei koi, it would still stick to its bracha. So the point is that it's changed from its original form, and we see that you recite the bracha. The Gemara says, no, that's no comparison. Me dummy, how can you compare the two? Hasam lesle iluya achrina, over there by olive oil, it has reached its ultimate goal, its ultimate greatness. And this is the way it's eaten. And therefore, it's called the fruit of the tree, because this is the real fruit of the tree. This is what it's meant for. Hacha isle iluya achrina b'pas. Here, there is a greater benefit, a greater Eloi. There's a greater mila, an additional. There's another greatness that it's going to reach, that you're going to create bread from it. So it left its original level, and it hasn't reached its ultimate purpose. So the Gemara says, and if it something that has a greater level that it's going to reach, would you not recite the bracha of the blessing on the ground for vegetables, creates the fruits from the ground, but rather you would recite a shahakol on such a thing as well, because it didn't reach its ultimate goal, its highest level? Amar Reb Zera, Amar Rav Masna, but Reb Zera said in the name of Rav Masna, Amar Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, a kara chaya, on a kara, some type of a melon, a gourd, or a squash that is not cooked, it's raw. The kimcha desairu, and on barley flour, mevarchinan alayu, you recite on them shahakol niya bidvara. You recite the bracha of shahakol. Now, the Gemara now is going to bring about its question. And the Gemara says, my love. What are we talking about? What is the understanding over here? Isn't it dechite on that? Isn't it implying that if this was not barley flour, but we're dealing with barley flour here, but if it wasn't barley flour, dechite, if it would be wheat flour, which is more important and considered more special than barley flour. Barley is considered animal food, and wheat flour would be more important than barley. So if it was wheat flour, the statement of Reb Zera in the name of Rav Masna, in the name of Shmuel, that you would recite a shahakol on barley flour is implying, but if it was wheat flour, the chiti, Bayre Pri Adama, you would recite a Bayre Pri Adama on wheat flour. And this would be different than Rav Nachman, who wanted to say that on wheat flour, you would recite a shahakol. So what you see here is that that not like Rav Nachman, who wanted to say that because it has another greatness to it, it's going to be made into bread. It's going to, that you would not recite its, you wouldn't recite its Bari Pri Adama blessing, the blessing on the ground. You see, you do. So the Gemara answers, loy, no. Really, the chiti nami shahakol niyabari, even wheat flour, you would recite a shahakol, which is the general blessing. And why does it say specifically barley flour? So the Gemara says, why doesn't it say the case of wheat flour? In kolshkein desairi, and for sure we would know barley flour. The Gemara answers, Hava Amina, if we would only have the case of chiti, which is wheat flour, Hava Amina, I would say, Hani Mili, this only applies the chiti to wheat flour, Avol Desairi, but barley flour, Loi Livrach Ale Klal, you would not recite any bracha because people don't eat it. It's not edible at all. Barley flour is not chewed on at all. Wheat flour is chewed on a little, even though it's not the norm, but some people will eat it a little bit. But barley flour, it's not at all done. So you would think don't make a bracha at all. Shmuel tells us this law that no, even barley flour, you would recite a shahakol. Obviously, the idea is that you're getting some type of a benefit from it. It's not, and therefore it is it would require a bracha, but wheat flour would be the same. Maybe it would also be shahakol, and therefore it's not a kasha. It's not a question on Rav Nachman, who said the bracha is shahakol. This is not a question on Rav Nachman because he has his explanation that whenever there is a greater greatness that it's going to come to, then it loses, when you change it, it loses its original blessing, and it doesn't reach its when it reaches its final state, it gets its special blessing. But because it's not in its purposeful state, it loses its original blessing, and the bracha would be shahakol according to Rav Nachman. Again, we do have a Reb Yehuda who said that the blessing is Bari Pri Adama. Okay, so this is starting giving you a little taste of some of the discussions we're going to have here in this chapter of trying to deal with food after it's ground, if it's not in its the state that it's normally eaten in. People don't normally eat it this way, and now that is just a little taste of and we're going to get to now salt, but I'm not going to continue. Our time is up, so we'll see you later, Mr. Hashem.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.